So we obviously need to review what it is that we're doing and where we are in our conversation, because it's going to be very relevant to the next piece that we're going to learn. So just a reminder that we've got our Mishnah, which is about the two people fighting over ownership of a garment. And there are two possibilities of how they landed up in that situation. The one is that they found this garment, and now there's a debate as to who really found it, which is the person who's saying it's all mine, or saying I found it. And the alternative is that they were both vying to buy a product from a seller, and each one of them is claiming, I'm the person who actually bought it. And we don't have the seller to be able to quiz, and even if we do, it's possible that there was so much confusion that even he doesn't know. So those are our two possibilities. And the way that the Mishnah wants to deal with it is, you take each of the people and impose an oath on them, and the oath has to be that I deserve no less than half, and then we give them half. What we've then started to do, and this is the last segment of this particular piece, what we started to do is to say, look, there are other rabbis in other Mishnahs who discuss topics that seem very similar to the topic of our Mishnah. And the question is, do those rabbis have the same view as our Mishnah or not? The reason that that's such a big deal is because our Mishnah does not contain the names of any rabbis. And usually if there was going to be a debate, if there was going to be a dissenting opinion, the Mishnah would have said, okay, that's the opinion of so-and-so, but so-and-so says otherwise. So the implication is then that nobody disagrees. Now we've got to test that against all these other rabbis who seem to say things which seem to disagree, and then test how they fit with our Mishnah. Now we've done that. We've now concluded that. Because we had three different rabbis, we had Ben Nanas, we had Sumchus, and now we've got Rabbi Yossi. And in each case, we spoke about their particular scenario versus our scenario, how they rule in that case, why they would still agree with the ruling in our case. What happens now with Rabbi Yossi is, the Gemorah says, we're not quite done with this. In other words, we understand why Rabbi Yossi is not problematic in the context of our Mishnah. That we get. But with information from our Mishnah, let's go back to test the debate that Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis had in their case, because actually our Mishnah should now raise some questions about their case. So let's remind ourselves what case they were talking about. There are two possible scenarios. We're going to look at one of those scenarios just for ease of reference. So here's the scenario. If you have a look on page 26, you'll see the little cartoon that effectively captures what the scenario is. There are three people over here, or at least three groups of people. The person on the far right is an employer of workers. The two people on the far left are his workers. And the guy in the middle is a shopkeeper. So picture this scene. And again, there are various ways that this could have played out. We're just going to choose one to focus on. So essentially, this guy who's employing these workers has to look after them. So he's got to pay them a salary, and potentially one of the things that he has to do is he actually has to, so either he owes them money or he might owe them goods. Like, for example, the contract might be that he'll feed them, and that's going to be against their wages. Now he's got to travel. So our employer, let's give him a name. So our employer, who we're going to call... No, just make him a little bit more of a Gemorah name employer. Okay, so we're going to call him Shlomo. Okay, so there we go. So Shlomo is our employer, and Shlomo has to travel out of town. Now, of course, there's no communication, and there's no money transfers, there's no EFTs, etc., etc. So before Shlomo goes on his little excursion, he goes to Eli. He goes to Eli, who's the shopkeeper. And he says to the shopkeeper, listen, Eli, do me a favor. These two guys are busy. They're contracted to work for me. And at the end of each week, let them come into the shop and get produce to this value. You keep a ledger. And when I get back, I'll pay you whatever you've laid out for these guys. So essentially what's happened over here is it's the onus on Eli to keep track of what's what. Okay. What responsibility do you think Shlomo has to safeguard this setup? To safeguard it, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's the one who's going to potentially be at the highest level of risk over here. right? Because he's exposing himself to two potential recipients. He's exposing himself to his workers that he's got to pay, and he's exposing himself to Eli, the shopkeeper, who's going to be laying out on his behalf. So if you were Shlomo, what would you do to secure your interests? You'd create some kind of a system, right? You'd ask for receipts or something like that. Okay, he doesn't. Shlomo doesn't.
You don't do.
Right? Okay, so Shlomo doesn't do any of that.
Yeah.
He goes away, comes back. As soon as he comes back, Eli is at his door saying, "This is the bill. This is what I laid out for these guys. So please settle the bill." And the workers come banging on his door to say, "What kind of an employer are you? You pushed off for 6 weeks. We haven't seen or heard from you. We've racked up this bill at the grocery shop because you didn't supply us with the things that we need as per our contract. So you now owe us. Here's the bill." Okay? So it's two bills. When I say bills, it's not necessarily that they've actually got a recorded bill, but basically they're saying, we worked 6 weeks, we need 6 weeks worth of wages. And he says, but I got the shopkeeper to give you 6 weeks worth of product against those wages. And he's got the shopkeeper saying, I laid that out as you requested, and so you owe me X amount of money. And now Shlomo's in a lot of trouble, because what does he do? And there are no witnesses. Okay? So what we're going to see is that the Gemorah is going to use our Mishnah and the principles of our Mishnah, which are, we said, that Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah really wants to smoke out the liar. That's why he wants to penalize everybody. Remember? So Rabbi Yossi's attitude is, okay, listen, if you can't prove whose money it is, put it away somewhere and don't give anybody any money. So that case, if you remember, let's just review what that case was. That case was Reuven and Shimon come to Levi, and one of them deposits 100 zuz, and one of them deposits 200 zuz. And at the end, when they come to collect, Reuven and Shimon both claim that the 200 zuz is theirs. So what do we say? We say, well, nobody's getting anything. We're locking all the money away because there's definitely, according to Rabbi Yossi, there's definitely a liar, and we want to smoke out the liar. So nobody gets anything until somebody feels the pain and says, okay, I actually just deserve 100. Whereas the rabbis said, look, what's clear is that each of them deserves 100 zuz back, and then there's 100 zuz we don't know what to do with, because could be Reuven's, could be Shimon's. So that 100 zuz we're going to confiscate. And we compared that to our Mishnah. So we're saying now that we have those two views, which essentially boil down to if there's something that you're not sure about, confiscate it. So let's use that in the context of our Mishnah. We said, yeah, our Mishnah is different. Our Mishnah, we don't know that there is somebody who's being dishonest. In that case, somebody clearly is being dishonest. So we understand that the harsh response. In our Mishnah, it could be a genuine misunderstanding. You say it's a genuine misunderstanding? Let's go back now to another scenario where Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis debate, which is this scenario. The guy says, pay my workers. Then he arrives and he says, I paid your workers, you owe me. And the workers say, you never paid us, you owe us. And how do they rule in that case? And then we're going to compare that basically to what we've learned so far. So have a look on page 27. Have a look at page 27. It feels the same, right?
Someone's lying.
Someone's lying. Exactly. Okay, so let's see. Before we can do this, we just need to quickly run through some of the vocabulary which is going to be necessary for us to understand this piece. Some words over here we have already learnt before. The first word on the list has an insight into how certain families got their surnames. Pinchas, not Pinchas. Pinchas. What's a Pinchas? Either you know or you don't. Right? Pinchas is a ledger. So it's very interesting. If you're into history, a lot of old communities, when I say old communities, like in the 18th, 19th centuries, you could still find the community Pinchas, which was the ledger of events in the community. And it gives you a tremendous insight into the history of that particular community, because they used to register all kinds of things like birth, deaths, yortzats, marriages, divorces, like all that kind of thing. Who contributed to the shul fundraising effort or whatever the case is. So they're very interesting books to get your hands on. So a Pinchas is a ledger, which means that if somebody got the surname Pinchas, the likelihood is that they were an accountant of sorts. And that's how they got their surname. Okay.
Next word sounds rude.
Okay. Let's play with that for a second. So what's the word? Nafka, right? Why do you say it sounds rude?
I just heard it's a rude word.
And be more specific.
Loose.
Correct. Right? That's the slang. No, don't translate as that. That's the slang. The slang is, nafka is a prostitute. Why? Because nafka means to go out or take out. So that's how it came to be the slang of a prostitute, because it's a woman who goes out onto the streets looking for, for prospects. So, but in our case, nafka means to take out or to go out. Okay? Does anybody know what a knas is? Hopefully you don't.
I've heard the word before.
You've heard it before, right? A knas. It's a word that is still used in modern Hebrew. So if you park next to a fire hydrant, you're going to get a knas.
Fine.
It's a fine. A fine. So a financial fine. I might have used the word penalty, but a penalty is not necessarily financial, whereas a knas is always financial. In the yeshiva systems, I don't know if they still do it today, but it was very common for whoever's in charge of the discipline of the yeshiva students to impose a knas if a guy comes late a couple of times in a row or something like that. Then you impose a knas on them. Well, not to mention if you miss. Okay, next one, chenvani. Exactly. Okay, what's a chenvani? We have had this word before. A chenvani. Chenvani. Okay, so there's a related word that you will know, and that is chanut. What is a chanut? Okay. We need Rabbi Yossi, yeah, exactly. So what's a chanut? A chanut is a shop, and a chenvani is a shopkeeper. Okay, so those are the 4 basic vocab words that are going to be useful for this piece that we're about to learn. Then there are 2 key phrases. Now remember, anytime that we're learning a key phrase, this is something that helps you understand what the Gemorah intends to do next. That's why we call them the key phrases, almost like signposts on your journey through Gemorah. So the first key phrase we're going to have is bein le uvein le. Direct translation, between. That's literally what it means. Bein le, between two so-and-so or between two so-and-so. Essentially what it means is whether you go with this person's opinion or whether you go with that person's opinion. See, what we expect usually to happen, and we've seen this happen quite a bunch of times so far in the Gemorah, what we usually expect to happen is that if we've got a serious question to pose against somebody, usually what we say is that this is an issue for them, but whoever it is that they debate against wouldn't have this issue. And here we're saying, bein le or vein le, doesn't matter which side of the argument you're coming from, the question is going to be as much of a question. So in this case, we've got Rabbi Yossi who is debating against the rabbis. So the launch of the question we're about to learn, or the challenge that we're about to learn is bein le Rabbanon or vein le Rabbi Yossi. It doesn't matter if you're coming from the perspective of the rabbi's opinion or you're coming from the perspective of Rabbi Yossi's opinion. The question we're about to ask, or the challenge we're about to propose, is going to be equally strong according to both opinions. Okay? And then the question itself is going to be built on this phrase, my shna de. So the word my means what? We know that word because we had it a few times before. De is a prefix that means that. When you put my and shna together, it means my shna, what is different? Now, you could use that as the basis of a question, a query, what we call a shaila, or you could use that as the basis of a challenge, which we call a kashya. When I put the de, very often I'm making it into a kashya. My shna de. What is different about such and such a case that the law is X when you said in a similar case that the law is Y? So that's effectively the basis of the challenge that we're going to bring against the rabbis and against Rabbi Yossi. We're going to say, how come if you took such a clear position in such a case, how come in this case you don't seem to take the same position? That's basically what we're going to be saying. Okay. So let's actually now pick out what the story is. You ready? According to the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi, if Reuven and Shimon each deposited money with Levi, one deposited 100 zuz and one deposited 200 zuz. But then when it's time to collect, they both claim 200 zuz. According to the rabbis, what do we do?
Give them each 100.
Give them each 100, and the remaining 100 we hold until the Leo comes. Basically, we try and get somebody to own up. Rabbi Yossi has a more radical view. Rabbi Yossi says, no, that's not going to... where's the downside for the liar? The liar's still getting his money back. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, take it all, hold it all, and don't let anybody get anything, because we'd like somebody to admit. Okay? Now, the case we're about to compare that to is not our Mishnah. It's another case where Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis debate. What's that case? Shlomo goes on a little business trip, leaves his workers and an instruction to Eli to give his workers either wages or product while he's away, comes back. Now what's happening? Both of them are claiming compensation. Is that not the same as both of them claiming the 200 zuz? In other words, one of them's got to be lying, surely. So surely it should be the same case. And if it's the same case, surely it should have the same ruling. Let's have a look.
Both of them as in?
The workers, because they say he never gave us, the shopkeeper never gave us anything, so you still owe us our wages. And the shopkeeper who's saying, I paid them every single week, you've got to compensate me. Somebody's got to be lying.
Is it time to ask questions or not?
You can ask, yeah.
Is it different because they didn't have something that they've deposited, 100 or 200? It's more like a Tallis. They had nothing to lose. They had nothing to start off with.
Okay, there is a difference. There is a difference from the perspective of the workers. The workers have done work. So they've actually made an investment.
Not pay.
No, we'll see what the halacha is in a second. You're going to see in a second what the halacha is. But the workers have made an investment.
Yeah, I get that.
So that is different to the Tallis. The Tallis, nobody's made any investment and nobody's had any prior ownership. Whereas over here, it does feel like if we don't compensate the workers, it's going to be unfair. And if the shopkeeper's story is true, he's also made an investment. Okay? Okay.
Well, he's lost. Yeah.
He's lost, exactly. So here's the question. You ready for the question? Bain l'Rabbanon uvein l'Rabbi Yossi. Whether you go with the opinion of the rabbis or you go with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, Hassam there. They're meaning in a different Gemorah, in a different tractate that's got nothing to do with our conversation, but is about a similar case to the case we've just had a look at. Gabay, in the case of Chenvoni Alpinkosoi, a shopkeeper and his ledger. It's a great way, you have to realize that when the Gemorah is referencing other cases, it's quite typical for the Gemorah just to give a name to the case we're referring to. So, you had the case of the ox that gored the cow. So the case of the two holding the tallis. The case of the shopkeeper with his ledger. What's the case of the shopkeeper with his ledger? The case that we have described, where I ask the shopkeeper to pay my workers, and I come back, he says he did. They say they never got paid. De Kotoni. So listen to what the ruling is over there. You ready for this? The ruling is fascinating. Ze nishba v'noitel. The shopkeeper, the courts make him swear that he made the payments he claims. Once he does, he can claim compensation from Shlomo, from our employer. V'ze nishba v'noitel. And then the workers stand in front of the court and they make an oath that they never got any compensation or wages or whatever it was, and they get the money. In other words, the ruling over there is that Shlomo gets penalized because he's now paying twice. That's the ruling. Okay?
So, do they go into why that's the ruling?
In that Gemorah. Over here, we're just asking a simple question. What's the simple question? The simple question is, Ma Ishna, why is that case different to the case where the guys were each claiming the 200 zuz that they say they deposited, how come that case is different? Deloy amrinon, that you don't solve this issue by saying, nafke le'mamoina mi bal habayis, let the court take the money from the employer, from Shlomo, v'yehei munach ad sheyavoy Eliyahu, and let that money be held in trust until Eliyahu comes, or until somebody breaks down and says, I'm actually lying. Now, why are we asking this question in our Gemorah? It's got nothing to do with our Gemorah. Why do we have this question in our Gemorah? Because we already clarified that the way we can reconcile Rabbi Yossi's view with our Mishnah is because Rabbi Yossi wants to penalize a crook. And our Mishnah could well be a misunderstanding. We don't assume that people are dishonest in our Mishnah. Not only that, even the rabbis, who are not as radical as Rabbi Yossi, would also say they're looking to penalize the person who's lying, who's cheating. So once we've established that both of them share the view that there is good reason to penalize a potential liar, in other words, if the case illustrates that somebody's got to be lying here, then they should do the same thing in this case.
But how could it be that they've taken an oath?
That's the case of the shopkeeping.
No, good question. That's a good question. How could they both take an oath? Because it would appear that their oath contradicts the other person's oath,
And they both found to be telling the truth.
Great question. It's a great question.
Usually when there's an oath, one then...
Great question. Hold that thought, because the Gemara will address it without actually raising that question. But it will address it. The reason we're raising this challenge is Daha, because Bevadai Ika Ramoy. In that case, there must definitely be somebody who's dishonest. There has to be. How can the shopkeeper be telling the truth that he paid them, and they be telling the truth that they never got paid? Someone's got to be lying.
Yeah.
So our question is, if somebody is lying, you, Rabbi Yossi, and even the rabbis, you believe that if somebody is lying, hold the money until we get the truth or until Mashiach comes. How come here you're doing the exact opposite? You're awarding both people the money, knowing that one of them could be a liar. You should be awarding nobody the money. This is even more radical than the rabbi's version in the case of the...
This is promoting dishonesty.
Correct. You're getting away with it. We're allowing you to get away with it. Yes, of course, there's the safeguard of taking an oath.
It's a rabbi's oath.
Okay?
But they both...
You know when the rabbis say something, you've got nothing to do.
Okay, is it fascinating, right? So what we've done, and this is exactly what people don't anticipate will happen in a Gemorah. The Gemorah at this moment is not talking about anything related to our discussion. We've now left the Tallis. We've left the two people arguing over the Tallis. But because of the principle that we extracted out of our Mishnah, and we applied that principle to these two individuals, Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis, that's allowed us an opportunity to test their thinking in another case, even though the case is completely unrelated. That's how Gemorah works. Gemorah is not going to say it's off topic and therefore don't discuss it now. Gemorah is going to say it's exactly the principles of the topic we're discussing, therefore we're going to discuss it even though the subject is different. Now, if you don't know that Gemorah does this kind of thing, you could at this point say, what on earth is going on over here? Why can't we just follow the conversation that we're dealing with? So bear this in mind that we're going to now segue, have this conversation, eventually put this issue to bed, and once we've done that, we'll return to analysis of our Mishnah, and it will no longer be the subject of, which rabbis fit with our Mishnah and which don't, because we will have put that whole subject to bed. And in a sense, you could say that's why we could afford to have this little segue right now, because we've actually rounded off that topic. We no longer have a challenge from Ben Nanas. We no longer have a challenge from the Sumchos, all the rabbis who debate against Sumchos. We no longer have a challenge from Rabbi Yossi, all the rabbis who argue against Rabbi Yossi. But we are borrowing information we learned out of this just to test the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi's opinion more clearly.
This appears to be an inconsistency.
No, I wouldn't say an inconsistency, but it appears to be off topic. Because it's
the principles seem to be an inconsistency.
Oh, sorry. You're saying that Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis seem to have inconsistent principles? Yes.
No, I'm saying no.
Take the one.
We've settled that. Actually, that's what I was saying.
No, we haven't settled that part yet.
No, I thought we did settle
We've settled the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi with regards to our Mishnah. That's settled.
with our Tallis Mishnah.
Correct. That's settled. That's
What we
good.
haven't settled
Is the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi themselves in another Mishnah on a different topic,
being this one.
being this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where we're seeing what appears to be an inconsistency between their opinions. Because on the one hand, they're so cautious to smoke out a rat, and on the other hand, here they seem to be rewarding people for doing things that really seem to be dishonest.
Are they both on the same page here? Rabbi
Well, they brought
Yossi
it as-
and the rabbis.
On this case, they're both on the
this
same
case,
page.
They both come to the same conclusion.
Yes.
But
On
they,
our case, they didn't.
Yes.
On this case, they both come to the
Yes.
same conclusion.
Correct.
but they brought this example in support of that. So there's something going to happen here. Why they brought this?
We're not going to bring this example back into our Mishnah. We're kind of being opportunistic almost. We're saying, well, because we're having this conversation and because we've now addressed Rabbi Yossi and their strong feelings, which we only got to understand because of the context of our Mishnah. That's how we understand where they're coming from. We understand that they have an issue with dishonest people. Oh, they have an issue with dishonest people. What about that other Mishnah?
And then they leave it at that and they move on.
No, we're going to answer it
That's what I'm
and then
saying.
move on.
So it's
Yeah.
gonna be
No, of course we're going to answer it. Now, now the answer is going to be really, really interesting because what the answer is essentially going to do is it's going to take something which to us at first brush just looks like one scenario, one story, one case. And it's going to illustrate that is true. It is a story, but the story's really got two very different chapters to it. And essentially what makes these two different chapters is Shlomo, the employer's lack of self-protection. In other words, this. Some people have a savior complex. They always want to leap in and save everybody from the things that they've done to themselves, right? Some people are like that. And other people say, you got yourself into this mess, you get yourself out of this mess. It's that kind of attitude we're going to take to this guy, Shlomo. You got yourself into this mess, you get yourself out of this. Shlomo is the employer who approached the shop owner to look after his workers in his absence.
I mean, on a logical basis, he does seem to be okay. He's made a mistake. He's not handling his affairs properly.
He has not handled his affairs
That's
properly.
just how it feels.
He's left everything very loose.
Yeah, but I mean,
But everyone's taking advantage.
Yes. Or not. Because, again, you always have to remember...
I'm sorry, it's the stuff giving Robin the keys for the shul.
You ran a dairy. No, you understand.
No, but you have the Robin the keys for the shul. He can take anything, and if you lose it, then we must penalize you because you gave him the keys of the shul.
Yes.
But you had faith and trust and all the rest in it.
Good. There's one big difference between that example and this example. The example that you've given is, I have trusted one person in the story. Here, this guy has trusted more than one person in the story. So he's trusted the shopkeeper and he's trusted his workers.
With two different interests.
With two different interests.
No, but in our scenario, Robin's got the keys and he must make sure no one walks out with the books.
Okay, sorry, I thought he was the one who walked out with the books in your case.
He's the shop. He's the one.
No, that's different. That's different because, and I'll tell you why that's different. Because if I entrust somebody with keys, at the end of the day, they become liable now in a whole different halachic paradigm to this. They become liable in what we call essentially a shomer. Let's call it a shomer. I want to get into the right. No, I've given him a responsibility, right? And that responsibility is that if anything then goes wrong on his watch, he's liable because he's an adult and he should step up. Here, I've given a person a responsibility that he claims he's discharged. It's not that I gave him a responsibility to look after something when it went missing. I gave him a responsibility to make a payment that he says he's made. So what I've done wrong in that scenario...
He said it, so you have to believe it.
We're going to get to the oath in a second because it's going to be very fascinating to understand the psychology of this oath. Very fascinating. But before that, what mistake have I made, or the Shlomo in the case, what mistake has he made? He didn't insist on a paper trail. He didn't insist on witnesses. So he didn't secure himself in this environment. And the reality is, truth is stranger than fiction. And there is always the possibility that something really went wrong. I'll give you an example. And this is a very relatable example. So the court hauls these two guys in front of the court and says, Mr. Eli, the shopkeeper, did you provide them with whatever the quantity of food was that equates to their wages? Did you provide it? And he says yes. And they say, and then the court says to these guys, did you receive it? And they say no. And then they cross-examine Eli and they say, well, when you say you provided it, what do you actually mean? And he says, well, I left it at their door. Could happen. By the time they come to collect it, it's gone. Right? Could happen. So there is the possibility. This guy's left things so unsecured that there's the possibility of, from the shop owner's perspective, saying, I delivered the goods, but just forgot to tell them, or they weren't home, or whatever the case. I didn't let them know. You see all these package thieves in the States, So do you have a claim against Amazon? Hey, do you have a claim against Amazon if the porch thief takes your package? You don't really, right? So they did this is the normal course of conduct in the United States. You leave a package. Obviously, you would never do it here, right? But you leave a package at somebody's door, and that's it. So that's maybe what he's done. Maybe he says, I went and I dropped off the package at their door.
It's
and
strange that this applies today.
Absolutely.
But then isn't it Eli's responsibility?
Eli's responsibility.
Eli should be penalized.
Again, should Amazon be penalized if a porch thief steals your package?
Shlomo, he has to pay.
Shlomo has to pay.
Yeah, but Eli, I think Eli should have to pay, because Eli's taken on the responsibility to
Right.
say, I will do as you ask me.
Correct.
And therefore, because I accepted that,
Correct.
I'm going to put
See,
in the
there's a key part of the psychology we haven't yet learned. Key part of the psychology, or I don't even know if the word is psychology. It's almost like the nature of the contract between each party that we still haven't explored. But just to test for a second, is Amazon liable if a porch thief steals my package?
Depends on the delivery system, I would say.
I don't. But you don't hear.
You never hear.
You don't hear the story of a claim against
People set up
Amazon.
their own cameras.
They're correct.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
So I don't know.
If I didn't receive a parcel from Takealot, I would phone Takealot.
But then they're going to show you delivery now.
Well, then they'll show me who signed for it. Then I can accept it. I mean, I could give it to everybody.
But you've changed the
in
changed
this
the
case,
nature of the case.
Yeah.
You've changed the nature of the case. You've insisted
But if they haven't,
on signing for it.
yes, but if they haven't, if no one signs for it, then I'm going to say, Takealot, you haven't delivered.
Of course, because the nature of the contract is that there has to be evidence that the correct person received it. There is no such contract here.
So now then I think Takealot's going to take on the delivery man to
Of
say,
course.
you must pay now.
Of course.
Which is our shopkeeper in this scenario.
Well, again, because that's the nature of the Takealot contract. The nature of this contract was left wide open. And again, there's another layer to the contract we haven't, right? There's another layer to the contract we haven't yet seen. And like I said, it's going to be very fascinating and not necessarily something that speaks to the Western mind. Okay, we'll get there. So there's quite a lot of words we first have to identify, and then we can learn it. Okay, the first phrase, balabayis, or as we say today, balabos.
Boss.
Right, the boss. So who do you think the balabayis is in our case? He is the employer. He's the balabayis. He's the person who has the factory or the house or wherever it is that these people are doing the work. Okay. Ano, with an aleph at the end, because with a hey at the end is please in Hebrew, but this is an aleph which makes it Aramaic. So ano in Aramaic is? We actually say it. That's with a hey. That's in Hebrew. We actually say when we take out the Torah in that paragraph Brich Shmei, which is in Aramaic, one of the things that we say, we say Ano Avda Dekucha Brichu. Ano in Aramaic is Ani in Hebrew.
I said
I. Did you say I? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay. So Ano is I. Okay. Shlichus,
Slichus.
which is?
What you do.
So what is it?
on behalf of.
Send.
So shlichus is
On a mission.
Agency.
On a mission.
agency is a good word, or proxy or something like that, right? Okay. Di doch means yours in Aramaic. Di doch is yours.
So Aramaic with Hebrew letters.
Yes. Okay, the root ayin beis dalet. Ayin beis dalet.
Slave.
That an eved is a slave. Good. So what is a slave? If a person had never heard the word before, what is a slave?
The workers.
Somebody who does something for you, right? So ayin beis dalet is the root for doing. For doing. Okay. In Hebrew, it would be much more work. In Aramaic, it's doing. Is, we've had this word before. It's an easy word to remember because it sounds the same in both Aramaic and in English.
It.
Is.
Intuitively, I thought it was that.
Okay. Gabay.
Charles is the gabba.
That's a gabai. And this is gabay, which means by.
As in quiet,
B-Y. B-Y. B-Y.
by the way. Or by
Like by somebody, as you're going to see. When I'm referring to somebody, I'll say gabay in the case of, or by so-and-so. This is the thing. Sachir is a hired laborer. Is a sachir. It comes from the word sachar, which is reward. Okay, so a sachir is somebody who's rewarded, in other words, compensated for the work that they do, so it's a hired laborer. We have had this expression before, af al gav.
Something behind your back.
Af al gav means even though. Even though.
That
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, shin base ayin, not a sin. A sin would have a different meaning, but the root shin base ayin, not to be confused with the day of the week or with a number. So shin base ayin, shavua, which is
Oath.
an oath. So it's the root for an oath. So it could be taking an oath or the oath, etc. Okay. Now, you all know this word, right? But do we know what it actually means?
So be it.
Aleph, mem,
So
nun.
be it, or maybe he, well,
So actually the word means, it actually means to believe, right? Or it could mean reliable, the trustworthy. So, okay. Sahadeh is the Aramaic word for witnesses. Sahadeh, witnesses.
aid is
An aid in Hebrew. Hav means to give. Hav in Aramaic. And lay is to him.
with a head.
Yeah,
Because la is two.
correct. And
to her
the,
would
the
be-
suffix yud hey in Aramaic is him.
and what would be to her?
Would be la, same as in Hebrew. Okay, two key phrases over here. The first is the word omri, which means we say, and that introduces an answer. So we just raised a challenge, and now we're going to give the answer to that challenge. And that answer is going to be based on something we have seen previously, which is Hassam versus Hacha, there versus here, or in this case, Hassam over there, Hainu Taimada. The reason is, and it's going to explain a reason that we hadn't yet thought of or hadn't yet heard about. And that's why the ruling is going to be different in that case, because there's information or there's insight that we don't necessarily have. Okay, you ready? Answers the Gemorah Omri, we're going to say, Hassam over there in that case of the shopkeeper and his ledger, Hainu Taima, the reason why the ruling is that we penalize Shlomo, our balabayas, and make him pay twice, it's because the Omar lechen v'ni le balabayas, because the shopkeeper, Eli in our story, is going to turn to Shlomo, the balabayas in our story, and say to him, listen here, I only know one thing. What do I know? I know this. I know I. Shlichusa,
Made you my agent.
no, Shlichusa, the mission, the task, didach of yours, in other words, your requirement, ko avdina, I did. In other words, you spoke to me about paying these workers. I did what you asked. That's all I know. I only know the contract between the two of us. That's all that I know. What's my? My is what? My is li, same as in Hebrew, to me. Gabei, by sochir,
The reward.
the laborer. In other words, my is li gabei sochir. What personal relationship do I have with this laborer? I've got nothing to do with him. You and me made a deal. Don't now bring another person and say he's the reason I'm not getting paid. You and I made a deal. You asked me, this is the shopkeeper. You asked me to pay money, I paid money. I have no interest in the recipient. I never spoke to him. I never asked him. You deal with him. That's got nothing to do with me. Fair? And therefore, because I have nothing to do with him, I'll gav, even though, de komishtava li. Okay, mishtava, you have to look at the blue to get the root to remind you what it means.
I can't read my own rights.
Correct. De komishtava li, even if that worker is going to swear to me that he never got the money, lo mehemen li bishvua. Mehemen is from that word amen. Lo mehemen li bishvua. I don't trust his oath. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him before. I've never met him before. I've never dealt with him before. I don't know what kind of a person he is. I never chose to trust him. You and I had a deal. The deal was I pay, you repay. I did what I did. You owe me money. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if he's honest. Go, you deal with it. It's got nothing to do with me. At hemante. You, obviously, hemante.
Reliable, believe you.
You believed him, not me. At hemante. You chose to believe him. And how do I know that you chose to believe him? That lo amarat li,
Didn't tell me.
that you didn't tell me, besahade, with witnesses, havle. Give him. In other words, you never instructed me to make sure there were witnesses when I gave the money to the worker. That means you trusted the worker. I never decided to trust the worker.
My mandate wasn't to go.
My mandate was not to record this transaction. My mandate was you trusted me. Therefore, you asked me to give the money. I did what you say. If you still trust me, pay me. You say that he didn't get paid. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't know who he is. I never asked to have anything to do with him. You never told me that I can't trust him. You never asked me to get evidence. So I'm sorry. It's a very sad situation that he's got an issue. It's not my issue. You got to pay me.
Because he took the oath and he said he did it, so he must pay.
That's right. I'm taking an oath.
I actually agree with him.
Right? Okay.
Very compelling argument.
Compelling argument, right? Let's see the other side of the argument. Before I'm going to, I don't want to skip the vocab because it helps us actually to work it out. Name, or nami as we colloquially say, it means also.
But this is going to be the same argument.
That's right. Exactly. 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 Hilkach. Hilkach means therefore. Shin kuf lamed means to take. So now let's see the other side of the argument. Vesachir and the
Reward. The labourer.
the laborer. Nami
Also the labourer.
also. So the laborer also. Omar le balabayis. also says to the Balabais, Ano, I, Avdei Avidita,
I've done the work.
I did work, Gabach, for you, I did your work. My isli gabi chenveni. Yes, what?
Pages.
My isli.
What am I going to do with the shop?
What do I have to do with the shopkeeper?
They're both using the
The
same
same argument. Afal gav. Even though the mishtavoli,
Then I took the oath.
that he will take an oath to me.
Not my problem.
Lo mehemeli. I don't believe him. I don't trust him. I don't know him. Hilkach. Therefore, teravaihu. I know we had that word already a while ago. Teravaihu. Both of them. Mishtav'i.
There's oath in there.
Take an oath.
To
Good.
me.
Travayu. They no. Mishtav is just the yud is a plural word. Mishtavi. They both take an oath. Ve shokli.
And they took.
And they take mi balabais. From the balabais.
I was arguing 10 out of 10, both of them.
Hey, isn't that
I
great?
agree with the courts.
Great?
Yeah.
So there you go. So what happens in the other case where each guy's claiming 200 zuz? We say, listen, that's impossible. Can't be that you both are owed 200 zuz. One of you must be lying. So therefore we're going to have to smoke out the liar. And in Rabbi Yossi's opinion, you just hold all of the money. But here each one of them has a compelling argument to say, why on earth should I be penalized because you didn't put this deal together properly? I dealt with you. We had a deal. I upheld my part of the deal. You have to uphold your part of the deal. The only thing is, you have to be willing to take the oath before you get awarded the money because there has to be some gravitas to your claim. You can't just willy-nilly say you owe me the money. You have to be willing to state in front of the court under oath that you kept the deal. But if you can, you deserve your money.
So it's actually a very different case.
Completely different
It's
case.
not- You think it's the same. but
Exactly.
There's no relationship.
Exactly.
And they're using it. correctly.
Completely different
So why
case.
they bring it?
Because we didn't know that until we examined it.
Yeah.
Because when we looked at the case, we all felt, sure, somebody must be lying here.
Well, it's still the case.
And it's still the case, exactly. It's still the case. Somebody must be. But it turns out
bad.
that technically that's irrelevant because technically each one of them says, unless you can prove that I'm a liar, I made a deal with you and I kept my deal and you've got to honor your part of the deal. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating piece of logic.
I remember